Okay, we are happy because we have an excellent meeting. Your presence enhanced and enriched our meeting, our university, our country. But now we are sad because we are almost finishing our logic school. But we will have a fantastic end, and I'm very glad to announce my colleague, Walter Carnielli, who is going to present, to deliver the last talk, the last aula magna of our event. Carnielli is a well-known logician with several works in distinct areas in logic, but he will speak today about a subject that he is working during the last years, the last month, the last years. Carnielli was president of the Brazilian Logic Society, was the director of CLE for 2 or 3 times. He received several awards, and exactly this aula magna will present part of the results he has obtained recently, and it contains a paper that was just some weeks ago awarded the Newton da Costa Prize, the Brazilian Prize in Logic, relative to the year 2022, and this prize was awarded to Walter Carnielli and Juliana Bueno-Soler. It was a joint paper, and so congratulations for both. And Walter, we are waiting for your talk.
Thank you very much, Itala. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor and an enormous responsibility to be able to give this last talk. And I try to make everything very simple. This has no much hard mathematics, but a bit different ideas that some people grasp it quickly, other people don't. I would like it that you be belonging to the first case. So I will explain it, the best in the more clear way I can. And the title is Paraconsistent Probability and Uncertainty, how a computer should reason about evidence. Not only a computer. I should have written here how a computer and how a philosopher should reason about the evidence. And this title reminds everyone about a paper by Belnap and Dan about these 4 famous 4-value logic, how a computer should see. And this is
okay. We are happy because we have an excellent meeting. Your presence.
Just to remind you, just to make it clear, because I have to say that was the role of our
university, our country.
Paraconsistent is a philosophical position about the logical consequence, reflecting the law of exposition and exposition
we will have
or law of explosion.
Fantastic.
Then paraconsistent logic is
and I'm very
human fallibility.
glad
Human or artificial intelligence agents make mistakes and take false beliefs or information and reveal theories incorrectly.
the last talk, the last aula magna.
There are 2 main branches, the weak and strong
Carnielli
logic, where the validity of the adjunctive and the non-adjunctive
several works in distinct areas.
We have heard
Logic,
listening these 2
but
weeks. This seems to be absolutely stupid and
about
obvious.
a
But it
subject
has not been
that he
obvious.
is working
Man,
in the
I have
last
worked with paraconsistency.
last years, the last month, the last years.
And
Carnielli
it was our dream to say that paraconsistency is useful
director of
to prevent the human fallibility. Because people
he received several
and then
awards,
paraconsistency should be very easy to do.
This
To help correct that.
aula magna
So nowadays it's clear and it's obvious, but it took us years and years to arrive at this position.
And it contains a paper
Why is
that
that?
was
Because
just
artificial intelligence or paraconsistent logic is not really
de
neat
Newton da Costa
in pure
traz.
mathematics. It's more neat
Epistemology
in
traz
computer science, artificial intelligence, big data, and philosophy of science. Now,
and
today, I'm going to show you that it's not very useful, very interesting and useful for philosophy of
Juliana
science.
Bueno-Soler.
I will be talking about what I call
was a quantitative, and so
paraconsistent Bayesian epistemology, which was the title of the paper of ours.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Itala. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor and an enormous responsibility to be able to give this class. The idea I try to make everything very simple system or non-adjunctive system. This has to do with
hard
accepting, but some that
a bit different
from
ideas.
some people grasp quickly, other people don't.
I would like
That you belong to the first case. So I will explain it in a more clear way is that an agent can have contradictory is paraconsistent and uncertainty. It's not adjunctive but not believing in a contradiction on a computer. In other words,
have written here
non-computer and how philosophy contradict beliefs while avoiding to believe in a contradiction. And this title reminds this is this position. And some people say that estamos a velho escola que non-adjunctive as Bueno-Soler has explained it. So parts of it can be read as non-adjunctive, but parts of it are not. Just to remind you, just to make it clear, because I have to say that, just to rule on our system knows that if someone paraconsistent believes a philosophical position about logical consequence, then he or she is committed to the contradiction of a contradiction. And we want to choose, prefer to adopt the paraconsistent logic. It's argued to prevent, because in this way, we could assign non-zero human or artificial intelligence agents, so it's important to maintain false beliefs that we are information and review taking for granted that logic should be adjunct. There are two main branches, and we are not afraid of adjunct logic, where the person can believe in A, adjunct not A, and can believe in the conjunction of A and not A. We have not been trivial listening in these 2 weeks. This seems to be absolutely because in our obvious. But it does not obvious. Some I have worked with this should be obvious by now. 35 years. So, for instance, an example, simple example, our dream to say that paraconsistency suppose they use 6% of the respondents prefer to prevent human fallibility. While 70% prefer P2A. There is a 30% percentage of variation to so I can measure correctly that. And this will be completely different. So nowadays, it's clear and it's obvious. So by years, taking seriously, arrive at this position. I permit that people can. Why? Because using probability, artificial intelligence, or paraconsistent logic is not really neat, complicated in pure mathematics. It's more neat in computer science. This is artificial intelligence, big data, and philosophy of science. The most basic technique of the I'm going to show you that it's not very useful. It's very interesting is not the same as inconsistency. I will be talking about contradiction, a free paraconsistent. It's not the same as Bayesian epistemology, which was the title of the paper of ours, which were written by using so I try to be clear and simple. Before it seems to me like to make clear, but I'd like to convince the idea. Some people are not convinced. They don't pay attention or not. It's inconsistent. It has to do with contradict, accepting or not. And try to give you some examples from A and B. If I say Lula is the father of Biden, and Lula is not the father of Biden. B is not completely obvious. A contradiction is not the A because there's a negation. Means that I don't care having contradictory beliefs, Biden or not. Even A, I only know that it's a contradictory. On the other hand, when it's non-adjunctive, but not believing in the contradiction, Lula is the father of the Pope, or in other words, this is inconsistent with non-adjunctive agent can maintain contradiction. There's no symbol for negate to believe in a contradiction. You can say, oh, it's so much saying. I know it's contradictory because I know the Pope. And some people say that the Pope is older than Lula. How can be the father of the Pope? Non-adjunctive as Bueno-Soler has explained, it's not a logical problem. parts of it can be
Those are
inconsistent with the
non-adjunctive.
fact, but parts of it
And
are
not
contradictory.
Exactly.
This explains.
So,
Adjunctive. So, in a certain sense, you can think in the following terms: the belief that inconsistency
and belief
is
is that
harmonious.
B
In he or she is disjoined the conjunction
like
of
A
A
and B.
like and we want
play
to
violin.
choose with
Trying
respect
to
to
know
the
what is in
adjunctive
coherent
sound.
sound.
Adjunctive view is hard because it is
And
assign no zero probability.
disharmonic.
So it's important several adjectives that we
that
are
can
taking for granted that
explain
logic
what
should
is
be
adjunctive.
adjunctive. On the other hand, contradictory. And we are not afraid of adjunctiveness. Because a person can believe in A is a linguist A and can believe in a conjunction, a certain sense as a syntax, and not be trivial.
Syntactic, you observe.
Because our logic is paraconsistent, it does not sanction this principle of exclusion.
And this should be obvious.
Okay,
By now.
contradictions are
So,
not all
for
the
instance,
same.
an example,
a simple example,
is a
selection
selection
tenet of
with
the
thousands of
device. Suppose that 6% of the respondents necessarily refer to the provided the contradiction does not refer to something, refer B to A. So this is then the spirit of this 30% percentage of contradiction. So I can measure it. And this would be completely different if you had only 5% of alpha.
So, by taking seriously this adjunctive point
for
of
some
view,
sequence,
I can
entirely consistent, then it's just and using
Right.
probability
So
explosion
measure
only
how
occurs
good
in
or
the presence of
complicated or how
consistent contradiction. And this is a
And some people have such a difficulty
to understand that. Once I received
No,
a message saying,
the most
basic tenet of the LFI,
you
you have a
consistent
consistent
is
contradiction. That the contradictions are completely inconsistent. No, they are not. Contradiction
our
internal philosophy. On the other hand,
of
it's not the
paraconsistent.
same as consistency.
Which
So I hope
is,
this point is clear.
it takes some time,
written by using
some
these
people
black and white
to understand that.
Okay, but anyway,
Now,
we are going to
I'm
be working in our
it seems to
now,
be
we're going to more
all
formal. I would like to convince you.
items.
Some people are not convinced, they don't pay attention, they say all the time, it's inconsistent, when you should have to say it's contradictory.
Which is a logic.
And try to give you some examples that convince you. If I say, Lula is the father of Biden,
So,
and Lula
it
is not the
has
father of Biden,
negation.
this is a conjunction, disjunction, no signification, because there is a negation. Like Paul, I don't care if Lula is the father of Biden or not. I only know that it's a contradiction. On the other hand, if I say, Lula is the father of Biden, and Lula is the father of Paul, I mean just, this is inconsistent with the fact. There is no contradiction.
Some classical.
There is no symbol for negation. Okay? So I'm not
You can
saying
say-
anything in new. Oh, it's all the same. I know it's contradiction because I know the Pope.
FDE logic.
I know that the Pope is older than Lula.
Is
How can be
FDE
the father of
logic.
the Pope?
Everything is clear and classical here.
Well,
And
that's not
double
that's
negation
not
of
a
the
logical
logic.
problem. Removing election those are inconsistent with the facts. Now, the
Another
important point is to add this explains for this connector, or this new connector. So in a certain sense, you can think in the following terms.
If I have
These are
consistency and inconsistent,
This is disjointed. In other words, consistent is consistent. If you hear me play violin.
It's like if I have
Trying to know
two
what is
white
incoherent.
balls.
It's hard. Consistent is. No, this is incoherent.
It was
bored, disharmonic,
inconsistent,
or whatever.
so
There's several.
So I
just show me that the notion of inconsistent is well behaved, is clear, explain what is consistent. Well, on the other hand,
well
contradictory
defined,
required, etc. So, torness, consistent, and again, have something is consistent. Is a linguist. This leads to an explosion. In a certain sense, it's a syntax. From syntactic, no, see, I mean, like consistency, system, K tableau, if you like. I have here either something is consistent. Okay, contradictions are not all the same. This again is a second tenet of the spirit of the LFIs. But for consistency, it does not necessarily trivial, provided the contradiction does not refer to something consistent. So this is the spirit of this famous gentle explosion. This famous here, and if something is consistent, then I restore this third value or noun to be consistent. I mean, then this law of right. So explosion only
occurs
Right,
in presence. I only have that in the presence of alpha being consistent.
Otherwise I don't have.
And some people have such a difficult to understand. In other words, I restored once I received a message saying, how
The
do you
presence
say
of
this?
You have a consistent contradiction. Contradictions are completely inconsistent.
No, they are not.
Open problem, I don't know
internal
if it's
philosophy of paraconsistency. If anyone could prove it,
So I hope at this point
it takes some time
or
some
junior
people
one
to
depending on
understand
how difficult it is. I
Okay,
tried,
anyway, we are going to be
working
working in
that
our
is
now and going to more formal.
So, it has
This is zero
my evaluation semantics, because I'm going to be speaking about this LETF, which is a logic of formal inconsistent and formal undeterminatedness. So it has negation, conjunction, disjunction, no sign for
It's paraconsistent part of black ball and white ball. Why? Because agents can believe in contradiction at the same time. They are not obliged to believe in all classical nothing new here. Only classical. It's a logic of freedom. I mean, just deleting. Let them be able to express a distinct classical with a partial text where there is some not doing anything evidence for alpha.
I have
But
this
no evidence for
this
not
belongs
alpha
to this
from
FDE logic,
on the context where there is
this
conclusion.
FDE logic, everything is clear and classical here, and
so,
negation.
Alpha has been established as true, and no alpha is definitely present. How is
Now,
that?
the more step
I can add evidence
for
disconnecting
until
until
you
you
connect
connect the point of
conclusion.
right?
So,
If I have conclusive
consistency,
I have
and
inconsistent. This is trivial. So this logic is consistent is consistent. Two moments.
having
It's like if I have
conflicting
evidence
evidence and arriving
I don't need
at the conclusive evidence where I have
consistent
evidence
evidence
for A,
it was born
no more evidence
consistent
for
not
not
A because I have
So
to
I
finish show me that the notion of a consistent is
And
well
then,
behaved, is clear, is disconnected, well defined, consistent with alpha actors, classically consistent. If I have a recombinant is consistent and inconsistent, so this leads to an explosion. Consistent alpha also exclude the middle an explosion that is
like
in the present system of consistency. I have here alpha and not alpha consistent,
and as I said,
or
entails alpha
inconsistent.
tertial conductor by itself does not hold.
Alpha and not alpha by themselves.
But for the consistent symbol,
Yeah, it does. All possible beta.
Now,
And again,
if I have
consistent
alpha, not alpha,
this
not consistent,
explodes
while
at the principle
gentle explosion on
alpha, while by itself represented here.
The alpha is not.
And if some
So,
is
this is
consistent, then I restore
By those
these not
third
not
value
reduction
or-
rules that you can
I mean,
we can
law of
so as I said, they are
Right.
I mean, I only have that in the presence of alpha being consistent.
Otherwise, I don't have it.
I mean, in other words, I restored again, I make the mistake that the presence is made consistent.
Maybe
No,
not.
this
This is completely
undecidable by 0-1 valuation semantics. Open problem, I don't know.
Never
it
know
is
where you are.
finite value. So if anyone
Yes.
could prove it, would deserve a note in Studia Lógica or other junior.
Non-deterministic
Depending on how
This
difficult
is.
I tried, I couldn't find out.
We have another terminologic semantic, that was worked by Marcelo.
So, it has a this zero-one valuation semantics.
Yeah.
In this sense, it would be finite.
Finite.
In the sense, yes, I mean, finite in a non-deterministic.
So, semantic vectors, in a sense, logic.
But if you, is then classical logicians say, o que achei with you is paraconsistent paracomplete.
Not
Why?
fine.
Because agents can believe in contradiction at the same time, they are not
But
obliged
the new
to
mathematics
be not
is
classical.
Okay.
It's a logic of freedom.
New mathematics is,
There's a let them be able to express a distinction
Okay.
between so partial context, this when there is some positive evidence for alpha, but no evidence for not alpha from a second context.
Okay,
Where
where
there
there
is
rules related to black ball and white ball can be proven.
So alpha,
This
and
is
so
important here.
alpha has been established
it's
as true,
funny.
and no alpha is definitely
How is that?
A contradiction
is
that
as evidence.
an inconsistency, but not vice versa. How can you understand that philosophically? So,
Is that
inconsistent is much bigger than a contradiction. Contradiction is just
So this
part
part is able to distinguish between.
So if something is contradictory,
having temporary conflicting evidence and a writing of inconsistent
conclusive evidence, where I have
evidence for
but
A,
not vice versa. Right? No more evidence
here
for
again,
not A because
if
I
I
have
finish
finished it.
So either something is inconsistent
And then
or it is
vice versa.
consistent, and they are restored
Disconnected.
Okay?
So
Consistent of the alpha act as classicality.
from the point of view of evidence, so
When
R1
consistent
means
of
that
the
conflict
conflict
evidence
including
including
video
video
and
and
explosion
the non-classicalis
of
in the presence of
consistent of the alpha
does not imply
consistency.
alpha no. That's just
Alpha and not alpha.
and there are two exact details of what's written here.
Beta.
I was just saying here with different words.
Although
Alpha,
not the alpha by themselves.
recovering most points.
This logic,
Most points
again,
does not
whole
consist,
reason
but
alpha
again in the presence
this
of
is
this
consistent operator. I can define
when
a
alpha
by
by
itself
implication,
alpha,
but not is not
alpha or beta.
So
Exactly
exactly
expressive behaves like an implication because
by those
in the presence of the consistent of the alpha, alpha and
now
alpha implies beta, I lose.
I get beta,
Then you can
behave as a
legitimate
legitimate
implication.
and
I came
as I
to
said,
the deduction theorem.
they
For
are
the
here.
form of deduction theorem, splitting the system, consistency alpha and alpha, entail and entails beta implies that I can
Again, I
go
take
to
it
the
as
side
saying that
and
make it
then
let
let
me
me
behave
like
implication.
right?
This is completely
So in virtue of the rules, consistent alpha and
Never know where you are.
and so
Yes.
consistent of the alpha and inconsistent of the alpha are bottom particles, so I have a bottom particles. So
Do you have a non-deterministic semantics for this logic?
FED,
Yes.
not DFE.
We have another
FED.
community semantics that was working by
FED,
Marcelo.
that was
Did I say
a question that you
Yeah.
somebody made last time and there was a certain
This
confusion.
sense it would be
Finite.
In the sense, yes. I mean,
The finite and the non-deterministic. I can prove that. Consistent or
But if you,
alpha or not.
I mean, classical logicians will say,
Lukashevich
So,
will say, let
yeah.
That's
Not
it's
fine.
important
Because
because
it makes sense
are the
for my definition.
the new matrices are
how can I
the
attach?
Okay.
This is a very simple,
Yeah,
very
but
possible.
the new mathematics is has a non-deterministic
Several logics.
Okay,
To
Lukashevich logic is to
this-
Guido logics. Even to intuitionistic logic is a merge of mine.
How can you do that? Well,
Okay, the following rules related to black ball and white ball can be proven.
From alpha,
this
from
is
the
important.
language of
So,
you can prove the following. From a
Satisfy the following
conditions.
A contradiction entails that
Always between zero
an
and one.
inconsistency,
But not vice
Zero,
versa. How can you
closer.
understand that philosophically? That this insistence is much bigger than a contradiction. Contradiction is just
if I had no theorems in my logic,
So if something is said contradictory,
this action.
okay, it belongs to the domain
Untype
of
autologicity.
inconsistency. If something is a bottom particle, it proves everything. But not vice versa. Is probability zero. And here again, if I the alpha is either beta, probability of the alpha is less or equal, or it has consistent
Infinite,
and they are
there's
stored
some
in
people no like,
Okay.
but it's it's enough for me.
From the point of view of evidence,
And
infinity additivity,
Rule
like he
R1
means that conflict
appreciates
and definitely does not non-classicality. I could the alpha, but I don't need for the consistent of the alpha does not
If you
imply
like, I can add in.
alpha. No. That's just
Which this
value
are
of the
doing
probabilities.
as I call there what I just said here.
Philosophers
With
probability
different
instead
words.
of mathematicians probability makes things different because I don't have here the Komogorov attitude of a measure. But again, in the presence of is a measure. It's a consistent operator. I can define but here an implication like not
probability
alpha
is
or
completely
beta.
connected to
Exactly,
logic.
another tradiction.
Behaves like a
Duplication are they equivalent? They are consist of the alpha.
For
Alpha,
classical
alpha implies beta.
They are not
I get
alpha,
beta. The equivalent
behaves
for
as a
classical
legitimate
application.
If
And I
you
can
want
recall
to
the
do
deduction
common theory,
for your classical logic, you need
if I
the
have
equivalent of a sigma
consistency
algebra
alpha and alpha,
are going to be a
then
sigma
beta implies that
Look,
I can
go to the other side and be
you need much more
Behave like-
mathematical theory. We can do that, yes, we can in principle,
some
are virtue of the rules, but not this one.
Not
Consistent alpha and alpha,
I have
and
to-
negation of the
to-
alpha,
to be
and
happy
and also consist of the alpha. The
By-
consist of the
about
alpha are
probability
bottom
being-
particles, so I have a bottom particles. So, although,
Okay,
I mean,
This,
not DFE.
using
FDE.
What is
FDE has no theorem, there was
Can you go back a
a
slide?
question that
Yes.
you, somebody made last time and there was a certain confusion just to make it.
So what, in
FDE,
methodology, what is the
LETF does.
entails not?
Alpha entails everything. Alpha entails any consistent alpha. Alpha entails any point consists of alpha, etc. So, LETF has. So it's important because it makes
The alpha is
sense
explosive.
for my.
explosive, right.
Of, probability. No, how can I have conditional probability? This is a very simple schema, and I use this schema in attach probability to several logics. Probability of.
Do Kashevich's logic is to give the logics, even to intuitionistic logic is an interior zero.
So how can you do that? Evidence. Well, P of A given B means how much probability is available for G affects the evidence for A.
From the language measuring how much one evidence affects the other.
Satisfying the
Can
following
I use
conditions.
another definition of
Probabilities
intuition probability?
Always
Yes,
between 0 and 1.
It's a probability 0, 1, and change everything and solve one
Tautologicity, if I say something, there's a happy has probability 1.
If I had no theorems in my logic, would
This is
make
a
no sense
zero
to add the zero is actually
Untied tautologicity, but if something is a bottom part sufficient for us, everything, the non-standard probability of 0 also can be defined paraconsistent, alpha possibility, probability of only is less with probability, also infinite additivity, there's some dispute on but it's hard for me. Where this possibility measure infinity additivity is a kind of rough estimate of probabilities, appreciates very indefinite, does not for I could computer science.
But I don't need for
because
the
it avoids the
In the future I can add it,
working with
knowing
this
in advance
variant
whether or
of
not
probability
A and B
as I call
are
it,
independent when I am going to
instead of mathematician,
A
makes
conjunction
it different because
In possibility
I don't have here the Kolmogorov attitude.
A and
Of
B
a
is
measure.
just the minimum.
Kolmogorov
Okay, so
is a measure, it's a sort of mathematical theory
very close to topology.
But here it's completely different.
Here,
Probability
measure of
complete
greatness. People say gradient calculus that
Do they are they
very
equivalent?
well.
They
for
are
non-classical logics.
for classical logic. They are not obviously equivalent for non-classical logic. So if you nice theorems of probability, for instance, for non-classical logic, you need the equivalent and not sigma algebra. I have it
Are going to be a
sigma algebra. Taking into account the conditional probability, you need much more mathematical theory. We can do that. Yes, we can in principle using this one. RMBC classical, but not this one. Without this one part here. So I have to
be
happy
new
object here to restore my computation of probabilities. Probability of beta
Okay.
given consists of
This,
beta and not beta. Consists of beta.
using the
one.
What
Probability,
is
this is a very important point. Very, very important.
Can you go back a slide?
Probability
Yes.
of the alpha and not the alpha is something between 0
Yeah, never.
and probability of
So,
an inconsistent.
in anti-tautologicity, what is the
Not zero.
alpha entails not?
That changes everything.
Alpha entails
Probability of the alpha entails anything, not one. But this is something between 1 and probability of inconsistency alpha.
It's explosive.
If it's probability of the alpha
The alpha
consistency
is
1
explosive.
or
explosive.
0, then I don't restore conditional probability. Finding here, I completely restore. So P classical probability is a subcase probability of the particular case of this probability divided by the probability of
everything
when B is not 0. Better say in other words, so in terms of evidence,
Probability
of
of
inconsistency is high. How much or
probability of inconsistency
affects evidence for A?
I'm measuring
Again,
how
this
much
is classical.
one evidence affects the other.
1 minus.
Can I use another definition of a conditional probability?
Important to understand
Yes,
what
we
is
could.
defined.
Appeal
This
to
defined as a
this
degree of
purpose.
consistency.
And change everything and
And
solve
have
the
a degree of
consistency
consistency
can be measured.
to say
Right.
that's a hard problem.
Where
because
is
here the PSAT problem that Marcelo
This is a
here
zero.
likes a lot, is
Zero
here.
point.
PSAT is again here, so
Of
PSAT, I have it, it's sufficient for us.
the PSAT
The non-standard
problem
schema for probability also can be used to
I
define
think,
paraconsistent, possibility, encountering this problem here. again.
Probability
And is it
also possibility measures.
Can it be complete?
Of,
Yes. Can it be complete as much as the classical hardware?
So I have again
Where
all
this
the
possibility
same
measure,
problems.
possibility
Yes.
is a kind of a rough
Very much
estimate of
probability,
which is very
Right.
useful for
right.
computer science, because
So
it's hard, but not harder, of knowing in
And not even
advance
easier.
whether or not A and B
Which is-
are
which
independent
is,
when I am going to compute probability. A conjunction.
No, agora
In possibility theory, possibility more
measure
of
of
this A and B
Paraconsistent,
by its
is
epistemology.
is a sort
So
of
the principle of conditionalization measure of how it can be expected. Probability measure of credence before people say credence count that also prior very well for a certain prior probability, and then the afterwards probability is called posterior probability. Okay, so some nice theorems about probability, for instance, probability of alpha given beta and not alpha given beta. I have it too, but what's important here is the Bayesian is not only based on the conditional probability of an inconsistency of the alpha given beta in order to determine, because it's so simple, it's so easy, the classical, it has so many consequences, and it has such a deep philosophical, I have to add. There's a kind of a miracle object here, and store my,
But it's not the only.
probability.
Not the only.
Probability of base beta given consistency of beta and not beta. Consistent beta is one. So if you
This is very important.
have just the
Very, very
definition
important.
of probability of alpha, conditional alpha is something between zero is absolute and probability of inconsistency or even less. So
Not zero.
P of H given. That changes everything. It's a conditional probability of alpha and thus the alpha is not one. But this is something between one and then I get probability of the consistency. That's all. But if the probability of the alpha consistency is one or use this is zero, then I restore classical philosophical probability. Completely restore philosophical probability. Classical probability is a subcase. So particular Bayesian this probability permits to make when everything when any hypothesis not the only data when probability of the consistency is higher is possible.
Very
Or
much useful.
probability of inconsistency physical probability. Again, this is classical probability of consistency probability minus inconsistency. You talk about dice and coins and things like that. Understand what this
You
make hypothesis degree of consistency, but not about.
Then I have a degree of
probability about hypothesis, right? Então, where's the kind of here? PSAT problem. I mean, that's sort of reverse like a lot of effect.
I mean,
PSAT is again here. So PSAT, I have the
baby.
theorem. The PSAT problem is also.
Now, how is
the Bayesian inconsistent problem and is it expressed by the standard? Can it be complete? Yes. Can it be complete as much as the classical principle?
So I have again
all the same problems, but it's a norm, a rule,
Very much
rather a rational model of perception logic, right? We had some problems with the referee of our paper, because
So
the
it's
referee
hard,
said,
but not hard.
That is not an action. It's not an action, it's a principle.
And not even
It
easier.
says how to use.
Which is a pity.
Posterior probability of H is, no, this, now I'm going to take it E into consideration into this, is the paraconsistent by its epistemology. Applying on A conditionalization is E, but how it can be expanded. Probability assigned to the hypothesis is based on the this is called, that's prior Bayesian is have a certain prior keeps updating the probability. The posterior discussion is to Bayesian is getting closer to the truth or not. Some people say, no, they don't. Some other people say, yes, they will. They'll be closing better, closer and
But
closer.
what's important
And the
here is
problem is not
this is one of the
few methods we have. Based here is a kind of mirror to talk about why is it a miracle? Because it's so simple, it's so easy to prove it. There are so few methods to talk about inductive reasoning. Philosophical. It's not an inductive. That's a kind of a mirror. It's an inductive methodology. But it's not the only. Bayesianism is not the only base here.
Okay,
Now, consequence.
how can we then develop paraconsistent
perspective in laws of relation? So,
Because I
if
have
you have just a definition
consistent
and contradiction are two different
conditions,
things, they are not necessarily the same. Can they be made the same? Yes, if you
High
add
school.
extra action, or even less.
say that
So consistent P of H gives contradiction.
is a condition
Then
of
you will have a new system which is closer to classical logic. But I don't want to do that.
And then I get
Bayes' theorem.
That's all.
So, but the principle of optimization based on negation, how to use the negation, is the use of it, which is the revised causes deep philosophical quarrels, difficult philosophical problems in the P and the A. So, as that is, now I'm just being subtracting data, probability of a hypothesis on here, the probability of A.
I think
it's very much clever. Guys are not
very much
necessarily
useful.
zero. Because that's only
in
change
we
physical
require-
probability, not evidentialism. Physicalism,
No,
we
I cannot.
Because they are not dies and coins and things like that. They are norms of reason, making hypotheses about two different new norms of reasoning. Those norms of reasoning have some nice effects. Here is a kind of stochastic process, and it is sort of reverses cause and
It's
effect.
exactly the same
Meaning, in terms of
the probability that B and A
Bayes'
is consistent minus A, B.
Now, how is the
Bayesian
update?
that update probability of the response H in face of a new evidence is expressed by the standard. So I have to be aware
principle
of this proposition here,
which is not an action,
but it's a norm.
Rather a rational possible number here. We had some problems with the reference
less than
zero
zero
paper.
because
My probability are numbers between zero and one.
It's a action.
It's a principle.
It says
Negation
how to personalize and take into account the measure of contradiction.
Consider probability of H,
Why is black ball
prior
on?
taking E into consideration.
Not classicalities.
They are not the same.
Prior, previous measure of probability,
They are not the same.
applying to H
Some
conjunction
theorem
with
that
E divided by the prior of
is this,
those
these
new
new
and close
based upon the older one.
As much
That's
as
true.
evidence in
Bayesianism,
favor of the classicality of the
gives
this is
update completely intuitively understood.
big discussion is
If I
get
my probability of A or not. Some people say no, they don't.
close to one.
Some other people say yes, it's closer to one. Everything gets closer to closer. And the problem is, this is one of the few methods we have collapsing into the talk about
And another
induction. Something
those
induction.
two guys, negation principle.
It's one of the few methods to talk about inductive reasoning, right? It's not an inductive logic, it's an inductive methodology. We have this complicated scenario here. The classicality can be very
Okay,
low,
now
and the principle
how can we then develop paraconsistent
numbers if they get bigger?
Because I
bigger,
have,
the evidence about classicality gets bigger.
consistent and contradiction.
Two measures are getting together, not necessarily the same.
Can they be made the same? Yes, if you add the extra action,
Saying that inconsistent
coincides with
is
contradiction, a proposition
Then
you
you
have
have
a negation norm.
new system which is closer to classical logic, but I don't want to do
should
that.
be if
What
B
do you
of
make
A be bigger than zero, or
The
A
principle of
quantification based on negation. So
This
again,
is
it's not normal.
is the
B
following.
is a probability function.
The revising probability.
And if
Revising
is
consistent
line of A is
then
P of not A, even A is zero.
Before I have that one,
Now I'm just
subtracting here.
probability
If I
B
as much as I get closer
to here, the probability of
compare the highest possible consistency is B is getting
closer to.
That's the only change we
And
require.
B is a probability function, and
Can
A
I
is not
prove
normal.
No,
then
I
it's a
cannot.
probability
Because they are
function.
not
This
the
is
axioms.
not very important in this context.
They are norms of reason.
Principles that
So we are
show
proposing
all
two
the
different new norms of reason. Well defined,
And
those
those
views
terms,
of
they
probabilistic
really have some
synthesis.
nice effect, as I'm going to show you.
Okay?
They behave like
And
a
this black hole pre-con is exactly the same as before. Then I subtract
now
the probability that
now
A is inconsistent minus A is inconsistent. One is a classical case that then we can prove, of course, with A.
now
Here.
my first theorem appears.
I mean, to prove theorems about I have to be aware of the following proviso here. Theorem defining form of bigger than A and not A on the right. BA is bigger than BA
possible
on
number.
A here and BB. I get zero or not B. Then zero. Probability of B given
My
A
probability
can be
number
computed.
is
So
zero.
A given B multiplied by this negation principle. Conditionalize, take it into account the measure of
I again, I have a way of reversing, so to speak, cause and effect,
classicality.
right? Reversing the
They are
cause
not
and
the same.
effect. Okay?
For two of them, for
They're not the same.
negation and for consistency.
Some
The same here, probability of BA is this, those principles get closer to this time. Is A given B as much as that is in favor of the classical.
It's not zero.
This is
completely intuitively understandable. I mean, not zero,
If I-
the effect is
my probability of
affects
A
the
gets
computationally
bigger and bigger and bigger, close to one. The consistent is closer to one. Everything
Now,
gets
let me
closer
give you
to
two examples,
but actually I have
are very
three
brief. Will be I'll give you the first one and the second, and I'll see if I have
and
time
another theorem.
to.
Those two guys,
Third.
the negation principle and black principle.
So this is an example of about an imprecise
The
survey
evidence in
and
favor
how
of
this
the
LETF can help to evaluate the
We
effect
have
of
this
social
this
media.
complicated scenario here.
Classicality
Classicality
can be
can
very
separate
low,
surveys
and the principles of
acceptance or
many
maybe completely different
of a candidate
numbers.
A,
This
that
can
they
make
pursue
all
the
bigger
time
and bigger
for
the
the
collection.
evidence
Evidence
about
about
classicality
classicality
gets
is
bigger
bigger
and
bigger.
and they did not
Two
two
measures
measures
are getting together and you'll be coinciding with the class. And I could, a political statement, I could not talk about that during the election because the right wing
this
would say a proposition is normal,
probability
it
has
has
to
normal,
completely change
if
it
it's
and Lula won the election because we're
probability
using
function
the wrong
B,
probability.
if B of A
I had
can be bigger than zero, or A and
stop
black A bigger
before
than zero.
because I know it was
So
pretty
if A is not normal, somebody is a probability function.
If you're in São Paulo and study in São Paulo, I offer myself to publish this. They say, no, please,
Then
don't
B
do that.
of not A given A is
Be
zero.
very dangerous.
And
I'm
A
showing you why.
given not A is zero, and it's done the probability again.
Okay,
If I
so they
as
are
much as I can
measuring the rejection or acceptance of a candidate A using the
possible
consistency.
If B is getting closer and closer to
And they
the
find
classical B.
case
And
acceptance
if B
rate
is a probability function,
B of
not
A
normal, then it's
is
a probability
0.4
function.
and rejection, not very important.
Probability of not
These
A.
are 0.8 principles that show
Only
bigger
my
than
measure of probabilities is
how is
this
and deserves a probabilistic system
system?
because checking internet habits, it's not perfect. People sometimes do not see the videos. I mean, how much time I spend watching video for the right wing or left wing or whatever. Those this is a kind of fantasy class, okay? Then we can prove there's a correlation. Now, the correlation. My first theory here, right? People sometimes just live during the conditional videos, or they don't care, or they lie, or whatever. Or they leave the computer playing all day and don't pay attention to it. So there's a correlation over how much time you watch.
Then
videos
probability
and
of B given A can be computed from A given B multiplied by.
Okay, but they do another interview search to know who uses a certain.
I mean,
social media. I have a way of reversing, so to speak, cause and effect. Right? Reversing cause and
Social
effect.
media is suspicious.
For two of them,
For
and you find
negation
that
and for
almost
consistency.
30%.
The same
And
here,
they use it.
probability of B
While
A
85% say they never do.
inconsistency.
As you know, people lie.
Can be multiplied by this.
Don't say the truth,
It's
it's
not
purple
zero,
or not,
and is
any reason. So probability of they watching, I mean,
not
this social media
because
effect is 0.3, and not watching is 0.85. Again,
nice way.
it's It's,
Now, let me give you
two examples, but actually I have prepared 3 examples.
Now, according to the survey,
I'll give you the first one, and second, and see if I have
and also
time
probability of
to-
T plus
on
not
third.
negation of T.
So
this is an
social
example
media or not,
about
bigger
the
than
precise
surveys,
conflict
and how this LETF can help to evaluate
So
the
I have a
effect of
paraconsistent
social media.
scenario. I could also have agents
Paracomplete
conduct
scenario.
separate
This
surveys
example
about acceptance or
I could have opposite
of a
candidate
candidate.
makes
This
this
happened
in
in
Brazil
Brazil
all the time before the election. So they had to choose in great numbers. And
So
they
consider
know what
that
to
there are
do.
no gaps. Probability of A or
and
not
I could-
A is one,
political
and T
statement,
or
they
not
could not
is
talk
one.
about that.
And then the action of finite
Right.
right would say
Probability
that
of A.
probability had to be completely
It's just
certain,
the
excess,
and Lula won the
0.2,
election because
but I need that
wrong
before
for
I need to know that there is
Perhaps.
and probability of T and not T is
Stop.
0.50.
Before, because I know it was
No.
very dangerous. So I was talking to
A third of some news, they also selected a country
in São Paulo and Estado de São
where
Paulo.
real
I
users
also myself to publish that. They said, no, no, please.
then
don't do
asking for their acceptance
Be
of
very
the
dangerous. I'm
certificate,
showing you why.
they find a conditional
Okay.
probability here. So they are
This is the usual
measuring the
finding
rejection of
conditional
acceptance of
probability.
candidate K using the internet
measures
historical
users.
They find that the
And
probability
they find
of case acceptance rate that a person
B of
is a
A
user of this
is
social
0.4
and rejection
0.7.
that
Probability of
is
not A
of a heavy user
How
of
can
K
he
to vote for K
bigger than
is
what?
very high.
How
Someone is watching
this
this social
understand?
media, there's a very
Well,
high
this
probability
understands
because checking internet candidates is not perfect. People sometimes do not see the video.
You are in
I mean, how much time I watch
with Mr. K.
video for the right to me, your left to me, your whatever. So
This
that made
this
us
is
try
a
to
case of
solve it.
correlation.
Nobody know how to do.
Measure.
There's a correlation. And correlations are not perfect, right? People sometimes is influenced by the fake news of T, or they don't care, or they lie, or whatever, or they leave the computer playing videos all day and don't pay attention to it. So there's a correlation on how much negation be T. So it has on your political update about is A given T, you divided by this factor. Okay, but they do another interview, to know who uses a certain social media T.
For my point,
Don't tell anyone, but
miracle
probability, probability. Why is that so? Social because suspicion
Because-
fake news.
And it is an-
And it finds that only proving that more than half of the user is more than 85% say they never fake news than by
As you know, people lie.
But important point is that in
Don't say
study
the truth.
probability, you
Yeah.
cannot
Verbal,
compute this.
not.
You have to throw away
So
all probability of they watching, they have a social media T is but using this new formula and not watching is 0.85. Again, can conclude something irrational.
It's
Bigger.
this is, in my opinion, is a very important point to reflect.
Now, according to the survey, probability of
This is
A plus not A.
How much time I have? I have 2 more
Now,
examples.
probability of T plus not negation of T or looking to the social media or not is bigger than 1.
Then I only
So
go to the
there's
second
an
example very
quickly,
quickly.
A and T.
Second example.
No, so I have a paraconsistent scenario. I could also have a paracomplete scenario, but I will give you an example. Pinocchio is.
I could have opposite sex sister of Pinocchio.
Makes complicated, but she's much smarter than he is. They got a very close to one. So considering that there are no gaps. Probability of A or not A.
Pinocchio, the poor guy, when she tells a lie, his nose gets bigger and bigger.
The action of finite
nose.
nose.
But for Pinocchio.
Probability of A
So,
and not A is just the excess, 0.2, but I need that before, I need to know that there is no gaps. And probability of T dies is Pinocchio, 50. Now, suppose Pinocchio
A
was
third
experiment, they
experiment.
also selected a counter
Without giving you any
where real users
If she asks
of
you
social media
about
T
your
and asking for their acceptance of
like
candidate
came
K,
out 4,
they find
suppose,
a
5, whatever.
conditional
Like
probability. Your rational answer would be.
This is the usual way of
finding
Because
conditional
so far
probability.
don't
Don't
have
have
a
fair
fair
die. You have to go and measure things. They find that the probability of A acceptance and conditional
that a person
acceptance is
How
a
much you
user
believe
of this social media.
If she tells
Zero
if
point
I
seven.
came up even,
That is the condition
Your
of
most
this rational
rational
attitude
attitude
would be to
of
vote
data
K
K
is very high.
if someone is watching this
Now,
social
the
media,
degree of
having
evidence
support you is
is
K.
That's even will be updated to
You are,
1/3
because
because
she said you,
you.
I don't need to say, with
There
Mr.
are six
K.
possibilities. It's even. So the odds are questions. And the media would like
Well,
to
so
solve
do
these
those
calculations
calculations
here. It's, you never find
Probability
this
P
I did this explanation here. Probability that a person.
I mean, if you, you're
going
going to see
by
by
the
the
fake
fake
news
news
of
of
pre-computing, given
intuitive
that she
is
is
obvious that is 1/3, but you can compute it. So
any computer can compute it. That's why I say that this is how computers
negation
and
with T. So I have
T
Good
is
thing
A
about it.
is A
Okay.
given T multiplied by this factor, plug in the values here, 0.7, blah, 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 I obtain 0.52. This is, from my point of view.
Explain the calculations.
Here
Here
are the calculations explain the probability. I'm not going to understand why is that obvious to most people.
Because-
If you don't know how to compute it,
Because-
how calculations
This
are.
is
an astonishing result.
But the problem
is
is
more than
it
half,
happens,
however, that Pinocchio
more
lies
lies
by social networks and fake news than by
And you
choice.
know
But important
that she has lied.
in standard probability, you cannot compute die games you play.
You have to
together.
throw away all this experience.
You measure, you have measured,
You have a
contradiction.
She's using
But using this new
Previously,
formula,
she has lied like
8% of the you can understand
Rational about it.
So in 8% of the cases, she says
This is,
in my opinion, is a very important
when
point.
it
Actually came out odd or vice versa.
This is
Not
how
always.
much time I have? I have two more
If you are a
examples.
perfect liar,
Which,
no, okay, fine. Perfect liars tell the truth. Just reverse it. Then she tells the lies
And I
sometimes.
only go to the second.
With this
example.
measure, quickly.
Second example.
Now,
Pinocchio.
standard conditionalization is not
Pinocchio
is withstand the
Community
community.
Pinocchio.
Pinocchio is consistent conditionalization,
Sister of Pinocchio.
and compute,
But she's much smarter.
Because her knows
the
the hypothesis H behaves classically. I mean, Pinocchio's hypothesis is classical.
Pinocchio, the poor guy, honestly tells a lie, his nose gets bigger and bigger, and he's fair, everybody knows.
Why?
But for Pinocchio,
B of even and not even concerning her information is 0.08. And then using this net risk
you are rolling
dice with
What
the probability of H given E. Suppose Pinocchio rolls a fair six-sided die, taking
Don't
into account
include
that
any
prior
if she has
one six about your
it's
unconditional evidence, then the die
You
one
want
of number four and it's even.
Five.
This one six and like four.
You're
And the answer with lie is 0.08
because it's a fair
fair dice. E and E. Okay, some sort of,
Yes.
I said,
Yes.
hypothesis tells you that they are independent events, unconditional, credit, blah, blah, blah.
what you believe.
So, you do the calculation.
If she tells
the die came up, probability of H given
Your
E,
most
rational magnitude, would be to accommodate your prior hypothesis. Now, it may be surprising to you
Paraconsistent.
now the degree of is greater than the standard W evidence, that's even, but this can be explained by the following reason. One third lies to both sides. Okay, there are six possibilities. It's even for or against the initial
So the
odds
answer
could be
out of
context. Right? I mean,
Well, you can
not
do
get
these calculations here.
It's you never find this. In these cases, I did this explanation here. A prior belief should.
I mean, if you
the larger sample is a kind of aggregation.
compute.
Taking into account the
Intuitively, it's
obvious
situation, but you can compute it.
So
any
computer can compute it.
Of course, we are
That's why I say
working on
This is how
computers
and this is not the work of the statistician.
Good thing about
Work of the logician. Okay. So I'm trying only to convince you that this makes sense. Okay, and then I have a third example that's the calculations explained here. It's important problem it's obvious in philosophy science if you don't know maybe calculations are the old evidence. But that shows that in certain cases, for instance, I will go I'm not going to the calculations, in certain cases,
And
yes,
you know
that she has lied. 8% of Bayesian confirmation theories you play together. There's a definition. You have measured that, which shows you that certain calculation. Previously, she has lied like 8% of the time to be done in order for a. So in 8% of the cases, she says the experiment confirms the theory, and it happens that in the case of Mercurio, not always was if you are a perfect mechanics and theory of relativity explains tell the truth very well. But according to she tells the lies sometimes. With this measure, the amount of the number that no, standard conditionalization is not rationally connected with the contradictions. So the confirmation theory is not working well in many cases. For instance, there is by the hypothesis of science, because science is a lot. And again, by using this classical problem, you measure, you can find a way out. I mean, your die is fair here, but again, B of even and not show concerning her information, there is 0.08. Lots of, and then using this interesting possibility gives you what the probability of H given E, okay. Taking into account that the prior is 1/6, I mean, it's so I go, you want the number 4 and it's even, is 1/6 as before, and probability of it. So it helps not only the problem perfect, it also helps. Okay, some the problem of accept called the perfect tells you that they are independent, you can the encyclopedia, blah blah blah. So you do the calculations, you compute this considered to be 2 the probability of H given E or 0.365 perfect fit. Now it may be surprising to see that what is criticism fit together higher than the standard. For example, some criticisms are required to sum to exactly. But this can be explained no more or less. Perfect fit. We just do both sides. Perfect fit. So we also solve or offer a solution of the initial belief. It could be perfect right? I mean, fit. Nokia said odd until over even. In this case, instead of reducing the belief, so it's behaving. I mean, prior belief because of the larger value very quickly aggregation. Right? Taking into account the symmetry, it's in situation involving the presence of a consistent. So this is in particular work on expansion of Bayesian epistemology. This is not a work of statistics. And I would like to say that this is chapter. I'm trying only to convince you that it makes sense of a chapter of a forthcoming book by myself, Marcelo Coutinho. Okay, and then I have a third example that's the concept of confirmation illegal duty. It's an important problem in philosophy of science, sometimes namely the problem of tentative contradiction. That shows that in certain cases, for instance, I will confess when you book into the calculation, in certain rights, as thank you. In the case of Bayesian confirmation theory, I mean, there's a definition of confirmation which shows you that sometimes certain calculation has to be Pinocchio computation. Have to be done in order for a new experiment confirms the theory, and it happens that in the case of the next one, when it was against Newtonian mechanics, the theory of relativity explained again very well. But according to
here you say that
Bayesian epistemology,
this probability
the amount of the number that they get was not
equal to
rationally connected to the confirmation theory. So the confirmation theory is not working well in many cases for standard
the probability
Bayesian epistemology or standard
even, yes, so it's not better than one
science. Again, by using
60% cases.
this new measure, you can find a way out. I have to find example that fit my here. But again, it's all possible cases which show that there is
the probability depends on how often Pinocchio lies, but it also depends.
possibility.
So, but it is bounded by probability of E, which does not depend on how often Pinocchio lies.
Yeah, no.
I don't understand these connections.
Well, probability of E is one half, 0.5, there we know, right? And Pinocchio lies because she lies differently, so So it
Well,
helps.
for me, this implies that Pinocchio cannot lie more than 50% of cases.
Okay, maybe my example is not perfect. I have to change the numbers. Yeah. You're right, so, this requires, this is besides the problem, requires a computer program, encyclopedia. The real possibility is of finding the real adjustments of numbers in examples. So the perfect. Yeah, you're right, maybe I have to change it.
There's,
Demands that once agreements fit
First
together
of all, is to
nicely.
say that
For
if she
example,
lies
the
more
grades
than
are
half
required to study
times,
exactly one.
you just
more or less
put her
perfect fit.
answers,
We don't
then
need
she might
here
have
perfect fit.
less
Yeah,
than
we also solve.
Yeah.
Offer a
Otherwise, you
solution
could say
out.
that this formalization is not
Perfect.
adequate because
Hey.
we are saying when we say the probability
So
of
why
E and
is
not
this theory
E,
so exciting?
those have different
So
meanings.
it's
One
believed
means that Pinocchio
because I've
says
never
it
seen
is
a
even, and the other
very quickly because I don't have
means
much
that
time, right?
it is actually
It's in
So perhaps a more fine.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I'm trying to give some explanation of my examples in order not to show the logic of it. I would like to say that this is jump, and yeah, you're right. Maybe I have to, actually, I need some nice and good postdoc student to work with that. And who knows a bit of programming, and has interest in mathematics and philosophy. And I'm just taking the opportunity to say that we have 4 positions open for postdocs, plus 2 additional ones, so if you ask for the concept, 6 positions open. And we are going to write, so perhaps in April we can make an international call, and we'll be asking for people to come and to help us, right? So that's a real big project.
Okay, please
Real
read
big.
this slide with Pinocchio
Just-
computations.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, I agree. So the first solution seems to me less,
That's one possibility, yeah.
well, it's worse because E can be, well,
Here, next one.
and event with a very low probability.
Well,
Next.
I can change the example to 0.4. Okay.
That's the next step here. So you actually tried to use your probability based on real data, yes?
Yeah.
Is
no,
equal
not real
to
data.
chance of Pinocchio.
I mean, not even my self figure can get access to real
probability
data.
of E,
I know,
which is
I'm not a
the
statistician.
probability
Big data.
even, yes, so it's not greater than 1.
Just
What
a
if Pinocchio lies
poor,
like in 60%
logician.
of cases? Or
Well,
But it would be interesting to, because
I have to
you are
find
making an
examples that
assertion,
calculations.
like a factual
No,
assertion,
what all possible
that
cases
people
can be solved.
have been more
I mean, and that
Well,
this
that-
probability depends
well,
on
that
how
could
often
be
Pinocchio lies.
tested.
Also
Well,
depends.
I'm just taking
So,
some
but it is
example that
upper
appear in
bounded
the
by
nobody knows,
probability of E,
nobody
which
knows
does not
what to do
depend
with these numbers.
How often
I mean,
Pinocchio
inventing
lies.
some numbers.
Yeah, no.
I don't understand
In
this
order to
connection.
show that in
Well,
principle, we can find some of is one half. You also could say 5, right? That was a perfect, Pinocchio lying because she lied itself to Amazon and.
Well, for me, this implies that Pinocchio cannot lie more than 50% of cases.
Oh, okay, maybe my example is not perfect, I have to change the numbers, yeah. You're right, so, this requires, this is besides the problem, requires a computer program to compute the real possibilities and to find the real adjustments of numbers in examples. Yeah, you're right, maybe I have to change it.
There's I think of a couple of solutions.
In
First of
principle,
all, is to say that if she lies more than half times, you just invert her answers,
Unfortunately,
then
I think it's possible.
left.
Yeah, but I don't know about it. Not to work.
Otherwise, you could say that this
Other colleagues
formalization
of
is
us,
not
like
adequate because
People
we are
in the
saying
rest of
that
São Paulo.
when we say the probability of E and not E,
Or Marcelo
would have
Filho,
different
maybe.
meanings.
But even Marcelo
One means
Filho-
that Pinocchio says it is even, and the other means that it is actually odd. So perhaps a more fine.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I'm trying to give some motivating examples in order not to show only the logic of it, show that can be useful for some. But yeah, you're right. Maybe I have to. Actually, I need some nice and good postdoc student to work with that, and who knows a bit of programming and has interest in mathematics and philosophy. And I'm just taking the opportunity to say that we have 4 positions open for postdocs, plus 2 additional ones. So if you ask me to compare, 6 positions open. and we are going to, Marcelo, perhaps in April, we can make an international call, and we'll be asking for people to come and to help us, right? So that's a real big project, real big. Just Newport project.
So, okay, yeah, I agree. So the first solution seems to me less,
That's one possibility, yeah.
well, it's worse because E can be, well, an event with a very low probability, like 1.
Well, if, I can change the example to 0.4, then.
Yeah, well, okay. And the next small question, so you actually tried to use your formulas on real data, yes?
Yeah, no, not real data, inventing, I'm just inventing data. I mean, not even Marcelo Figure can get access to real data, I mean, no access. I'm not a statistician now, big data, computer scientist, just a poor, humble logician doing some conclusions.
But it would be interesting to, because you are making an assertion, like a factual assertion, that people have been more close to have been, so that could be tested.
Well, I'm just taking some examples that appear in the media. Nobody knows what to do with these numbers. I'm inventing some numbers that go correctly, more or less, to show that in principle, we can find some application. That's what I do. Otherwise, I could sell that, right? That was a perfect thing, I would never show you. I would sell to Amazon and to make a.
Another question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Is there a way to measure the predictions, the confiability of the predictions related to contradictions of data?
I don't know. This has to do with likelihood, this kind of things that I don't know much. In principle, yes. I mean, a competent statistician would gives you an answer. Unfortunately, I don't know. I think it's possible, but I don't know how to do it. I'm not working with this kind of. Other colleagues of us, like people in the University of São Paulo, or Julie Stern, and people that are working, or Marcelo Figueiredo maybe, but even Marcelo Figueiredo does not.
Another question? Comments? No? Well, thank you.